It was a bright Friday morning in Crestwood, Colorado, one of those small, mountainside towns where people still leave their doors unlocked and everyone knows everyone. For three best friends, Ethan Walker, Ryan Cole, and Liam Harris, this weekend was supposed to be the start of summer freedom. They had just finished their junior year at Crestwood High, and all they could talk about for weeks was this one trip, a 2-day campout up at Crystal Ridge Trail, a quiet stretch of forest about 40 miles north of town. Ethan was the planner, the one who made lists and checked the weather twice. Ryan, the athlete, loud, funny, always with a camera in hand. And Liam, the quiet one, the thinker, more interested in the stars than anything else. The three had grown up together since kindergarten. They'd spent winters sledding down the same hills and summers swimming in the same creek that ran behind Ethan's house. Their parents trusted them, maybe too much. After all, what could possibly go wrong in a town like Crestwood? That morning, Ethan's mom filmed them on her phone as they packed up the red Jeep Cherokee. You can almost see it, the boys posing, pretending to be explorers, making goofy faces. Someone jokes about who'll forget the marshmallows. Then Ethan's mom says, "Hold on, one last picture." The three line up, arms over each other's shoulders, with the mountains rising behind them. And that photo. That photo would later be the last one ever taken of all three together. They drove off at 8:16 a.m., three friends, chasing a weekend of adventure. The air was warm, the sky perfectly clear. Ryan's camera captured them singing along to old songs, laughing about who would survive the wilderness longest. None of them knew that the trail they were heading toward, Crystal Ridge, had a reputation locals didn't talk about much anymore. Old mining shafts, missing hiker stories, sudden fogs that came without warning. But to three teenage boys, it was just another adventure, a place where nothing bad could possibly happen. They reached the base of the trail just before noon. A few hikers saw them unpacking gear, bright-colored tents, fishing rods, and a small portable grill. They were laughing, alive, and full of plans for the night ahead. What no one knew was that by Sunday morning, all contact with them would be gone. Their phones silent. Their campsite empty. And that cheerful morning footage, the one Ethan's mom filmed in her driveway, would become the only clue investigators had left to understand what really happened that weekend. Three teens. One perfect weekend. And a mystery that would haunt Colorado for years to come. If you were their parent, would you have let your kid go on that trip? Let me know what you think, I read every comment. At exactly 8:47 a.m. A gas station camera on Highway 12, just outside of Crestwood, captured the last known clear footage of the boys alive. It's a grainy recording, the kind investigators would later watch frame by frame. You see Ryan at the counter, paying for snacks, 2 energy drinks, a pack of beef jerky, and a disposable lighter. Ethan's outside, leaning on the Jeep, scrolling through his phone. And Liam? He's by the passenger door, smiling at something off camera. For a moment, it's ordinary. Three friends, joking, planning a weekend they'll never finish. The gas station clerk, Mark Denson, later told police. They were polite kids, full of energy. I remember Ryan laughing about how they'd catch the biggest fish in Colorado. They seemed normal. But that footage, time-stamped 8:47 and 23 seconds a.m., would soon become evidence in a missing person investigation. Around 9:35 a.m., Ranger Olivia Hartman, who had been stationed at the Crystal Ridge entrance gate, recalled three teens arriving in a red Jeep. She checked their camping permit, signed neatly in Ethan's handwriting, and reminded them about fire safety and the recent cougar sightings in the upper ridge. They seemed respectful, she said later. The driver, Ethan, thanked me, said they'd be careful. They didn't look scared. Just excited. She remembered watching them drive off, the vehicle disappearing behind a bend lined with pines, sunlight flashing across its hood. That would be the last verified sighting. From there, the trail wound deeper into the rocky foothills, away from cell towers, surrounded by cliffs and thick forest. The air that day was perfect, 72 degrees, clear skies, and no forecast of storms. For search teams later, that made it even stranger, nothing in the weather explained what was about to happen. As the camera pans over the quiet woods, imagine the stillness. No sound but the river. No sign of what's coming. Because after that morning, no one would see Ethan, Ryan, or Liam ever again. Their Jeep would be found exactly where they'd parked it, untouched, doors locked, keys missing. But the woods beyond? They held secrets no one was prepared to uncover. Be honest, would you let your teens camp this deep in the wilderness, even with friends? Drop a yes or no below. I'm curious how many of you would take that risk. When Sunday came, the mountains were quiet. No one thought much of it at first. The boys had said they'd be back by evening, but teenagers run late all the time. Parents told themselves, maybe the signal's bad, maybe they lost track of time. By Monday morning, that reassurance had turned to unease. Ethan's mom, Lisa Carter, tried calling his phone at 6:40 a.m. Straight to voicemail. She texted, "Good morning, sweetheart. Are you guys on your way back?" No reply. Ryan's dad, a retired firefighter, called the other boys' parents, maybe one of them had heard something. But every phone, same response. Off. Silent. Dead. By noon Monday, panic had set in. The parents drove straight to Crystal Ridge Trailhead, expecting to see the boys' Jeep parked there. It was. Keys gone. Doors locked. A fishing pole leaning against the backseat window, untouched. No footprints nearby. No sign of movement. Sheriff's deputies arrived by 2 p.m., joined by volunteer hikers and the Cedar County Search and Rescue Unit. Helicopters circled overhead while dogs combed through pine and rock. The area was so vast, so silent, that every sound, a snapping twig, a rustling leaf, made hearts jump. For 2 days, they searched the banks of Crystal Creek, the trail edges, the cliffs above Raven Point. They found nothing. Until the third morning. A search volunteer named Toby Marshall spotted something near the tree line, 50 yards from where the campsite was believed to be. At first, it looked like a shadow. Then he saw the shape. A single hiking boot, lying on its side beside a burnt-out fire ring. Ashes scattered. Half-melted marshmallow skewer nearby. And beside it, a folded camping chair, empty, coated in dew. No signs of struggle. No footprints leaving the site. Just that boot, perfectly placed, as if someone had set it there on purpose. For investigators, this was the first real clue. But it wasn't comfort, it was dread. Because that boot belonged to Liam Hayes, the youngest of the three. By now, local media had caught wind of the search. News vans gathered at the base of the trail, drones buzzed overhead, and reporters whispered words like "foul play." The boys' parents stood together at the ranger station, eyes fixed on the mountains. They were only a few miles away, and yet, completely unreachable. That night, search dogs stopped reacting. No scent trail. Nothing to follow. It was as if the three boys had walked off the face of the earth. Imagine being one of those parents, your child just gone. No call. No trace. What would you do first? I really want to hear your thoughts in the comments. 3 days after the boys were reported missing, something strange happened, something that changed the entire direction of the investigation. Haley Cooper, Ryan's girlfriend, was sitting in her bedroom scrolling through old photos when her phone buzzed. It was a message from Ryan. Sent at 9:12 p.m., the night they disappeared. The message read, "You won't believe what we just found." That was it. No photo. No follow-up text. Just that single, chilling sentence. Haley said she hadn't seen the message earlier because it arrived with no service notification. Investigators later confirmed it had been delayed by poor signal in the mountains, but the timestamp showed it had indeed been sent that Friday night, right before the phones went completely dark. Detective Amanda Porter and her team immediately contacted the phone carrier. They traced the signal's last ping to a location known as Bear Creek Lookout, about 4 miles east of Crystal Ridge Trail, perched above a steep drop into the forest valley below. It wasn't part of the boys' planned route. In fact, reaching that lookout required hiking off the main path, through thick underbrush and across unstable ground. So, what were they doing there? By the next morning, search teams were deployed to Bear Creek. They found the old wooden platform that once served as a ranger's observation deck, now weathered, unstable, half-collapsed from age. On one of the support beams, searchers noticed something carved deep into the wood: initials. ERL. Ethan. Ryan. Liam. Freshly cut. Not weathered like the rest. But there was no other sign of them. No bags. No tracks. No phones. Only the initials. And an old rusted flashlight, batteries long dead, lying in the dirt below the lookout. When Haley heard about the carving, she said Ryan sometimes liked leaving their initials in trees when they hiked, "our small mark in the world," he'd called it. But there was something about those letters on the lookout beam that didn't feel romantic. They felt like a message. Investigators believed the boys might have found something unusual up there, something that made them leave their campsite in a hurry. But what? No one could tell. The terrain near Bear Creek was rough, filled with hidden caves and long-abandoned mining shafts. Places where the ground itself could swallow you whole. What do you think they found that night? Something natural, or something they weren't supposed to see? Drop your theory in the comments, I read every one. By the fourth day, the entire town of Crestwood, Colorado was awake, even at night. Posters of Ethan, Ryan, and Liam were taped to gas station doors, church walls, and the windows of pickup trucks driving up and down Main Street. Headlines spread fast: 3 teens missing in the Rockies. News vans crowded the police station parking lot. Reporters stood in the rain, live on camera, as parents clung to each other, faces pale, sleepless, and desperate. Hundreds of volunteers joined the search: locals, hikers, even strangers from neighboring towns. They combed through every ridge, stream, and clearing. They called out the boys' names into the forest. But the only sound that answered back was the wind. The FBI offered technical support. Drones scanned the forest canopy. K-9 units traced scent trails that always ended near Bear Creek Ridge, then vanished, as if the boys had simply stepped off the map. That's when Detective Amanda Porter was brought in. Porter had a reputation across Colorado: methodical, unshaken, and relentless. When she arrived at the scene, she said only one thing to the press: "We will bring them home. One way or another." Behind the calm, she knew how bad it looked. 3 healthy teenagers. No sign of struggle. No footprints beyond the camp. It didn't add up. Rumors started to spread online, theories that the boys had stumbled across an illegal grow operation hidden deep in the mountains. Others whispered about a hermit living off the grid, someone locals called the Watcher. And some older residents, especially those who'd worked in the mines decades ago, mentioned something stranger: tunnels that ran for miles under the ridge, long forgotten and uncharted. Detective Porter listened to every theory but trusted none. She focused on facts: the last text at 9:12 p.m., the initials carved at Bear Creek, and that single hiking boot left by the fire ring. The boot belonged to Liam. It was clean. Not torn, not lost in panic, placed as if someone wanted it to be found. By the second week, the search became a vigil. Families gathered every night at Crestwood Park, holding candles, praying, waiting. Rain or shine, they stood there. A mother whispered, "He's still out there. I can feel it." The story went national. News networks aired special segments. Social media exploded with hashtags, #FindTheCrestwood3. Some users claimed to see strange lights near the mountains that weekend. Others posted blurry photos, most debunked, all unsettling. But no matter how many search teams entered the forest, nothing new surfaced. No new tracks. No equipment. No trace. It was as if the woods had swallowed them whole. Detective Porter once said in an interview years later, "I've investigated disappearances before, but this one, it felt different. Like something didn't want to be found." Okay, pause for a moment. What's your theory so far? Do you think they ran into someone, or something? Drop your thoughts below. I'm going through every comment tonight. 2 weeks after the search was called off, a man named Harold McKay drove his rusted blue pickup up through Rockwood Valley, a place most locals avoided once winter set in. Harold wasn't part of the search teams. He was a retired geologist, 71 years old, soft-spoken, with eyes that always looked like they were studying the ground. For 40 years, he'd mapped the soil, the bedrock, and the shifting underground streams across the region. That morning, he was checking a small landslide that had blocked one of the forest roads. But when he stepped out of his truck, something caught his attention. The soil, freshly disturbed, darker, looser than the rest. About 6 feet wide. Oval. He knelt beside it, brushed away a layer of frost, and noticed what he later called a perfect indentation, like something had been buried, and quickly taken back out. He marked the coordinates on his map and reported it to the county ranger office that same afternoon. The rangers promised to check it the next day. But by morning, the snow came. Thick, heavy, and relentless. When investigators finally reached the site 3 days later, it was buried under 2 feet of ice and snow. No tracks. No scent. Whatever Harold had seen, it was gone. The report was filed away. No one thought much of it. Not the sheriff, not the media, not even Detective Porter, who was drowning in a dozen dead-end leads. But the GPS pin Harold logged that day. It sat exactly 1 mile east of Bear Creek Ridge. And directly above the spot where, months later, a rusted barrel would be found, with something inside that would change everything. Harold McKay would later tell reporters, "I don't scare easy. But when I saw that patch of ground, it didn't feel like the forest anymore. It felt used. Like something human had been there." That's the first breadcrumb, the kind that rewards the sharp-eyed viewer. Because while the world was moving on, the mountain wasn't done. Now, here's where things start getting dark. If you've been watching closely, you might already guess what's coming. Let's see if you're right. A year passed. The snow melted, the trails reopened, and the summer tourists returned to Crestwood, pretending things were normal again. But for the people who lived there, nothing was normal. Every corner of town still whispered their names: Ethan, Ryan, Liam. There were no funerals. Only memorials. Every June, the families gathered near the Crystal Ridge trailhead, releasing 3 white lanterns into the dusk sky. Mothers crying quietly into their hands. Fathers staring into the dark tree line, as if the boys might come walking out any second. In small towns like Crestwood, time doesn't heal, it settles, like dust. And under that dust, pain turns into obsession. Ryan's mother began logging into his old social accounts every night, checking for signs, even after the passwords stopped working. Liam's dad, a former park volunteer, mapped the terrain himself. Convinced the police missed something. And Ethan's little sister started filming short clips in the woods, posting them on TikTok with the caption, "Still waiting for my brother." Meanwhile, Detective Amanda Porter hadn't moved on either. Even after being reassigned, she couldn't stop reopening the case files. Late at night, she'd sit alone in her Denver apartment, police reports scattered across her table, maps on the wall, red circles marking spots the drones never scanned. Her captain had told her to let it go. But she couldn't. Something didn't add up, not the phone pings, not the tracks, not the soil sample from Rockwood Valley. And that's when the annual anniversary came again, 2 years since the boys disappeared. For most, it was just a quiet Sunday. But for Porter, something about that date, the same sunlight, the same wind, it pulled her back to those files one more time. She spread the maps on her desk. And right there, between the search routes and terrain markings, she noticed something no one had before. A gap. A 200-yard section that had been marked inaccessible due to flooding. The exact area where Harold McKay had logged his report. Her pulse quickened. What if they'd never really checked that place at all? That night, she made a decision. She was going back to Rockwood Valley, alone if she had to. Because in Crestwood, Colorado, the town hadn't forgotten. And neither had the mountain. If you've been following since the start, what do you think Porter is about to find? Drop your theory in the comments, I'm reading them all. It was a Monday morning when a construction crew from Eagle Point Developments began clearing a new hiking route through the lower Rockwood Valley. Just a routine job, cut through the brush, flatten the soil, move on to the next section. But at exactly 10:42 a.m., one of the excavator operators, Miguel Santos, felt something clang beneath the blade. At first, he thought it was old scrap metal from a hunting shed. But when he jumped down to check, he noticed something that made his stomach twist. The ground around the metal was freshly disturbed, the dirt darker than the rest, like it had been turned over not too long ago. He brushed away the soil, revealing a rusted metal barrel, partially buried under roots and leaves. It was sealed shut, no openings, no rust holes big enough to peek inside, and the smell. The smell was what made him step back. Something sweet, chemical, and wrong. Miguel called his foreman. The foreman called the sheriff. And by noon, Eagle Point was crawling with law enforcement. When Detective Amanda Porter arrived, the air felt heavy, not just with rain, but with memory. It had been 2 years since she'd stood this close to these mountains. And now, here she was again, staring at a barrel that shouldn't have been here. She crouched down beside it. The welding looked newer than the rest of the metal. As if someone had sealed it deliberately, after years of exposure. Her gloved hand brushed the surface, faint tool marks, maybe a serial number worn off. Forensic units worked quickly. They wrapped the barrel, attached lifting straps, and signaled for the helicopter to lower its cable. As the wind whipped and the barrel rose slowly above the trees, spinning, dripping mud, everyone on the ground stopped talking. Because they all knew. Whatever was inside, was about to end the silence of the past 2 years. Detective Porter stood behind the observation glass as technicians prepared to cut the barrel open. The smell hit first, a wave of decay and damp metal. Inside, they found human remains wrapped in layers of tarp and duct tape. Next to it, a broken wristwatch, a camping knife, and what looked like a torn strip of fabric with the word Ridge barely legible. Porter felt her throat tighten. She didn't need DNA results to know what she was looking at. But the medical examiner confirmed it hours later. The remains belonged to Liam Walker, one of the 3 missing boys. For the first time in 2 years, the families had an answer. But it wasn't the one they'd been praying for. Yet, something about the discovery didn't fit. The time of death didn't line up. The way the body was preserved, not left to decay naturally, suggested it had been stored somewhere else before being buried. So, the real question wasn't what they found in the barrel. It was who put it there. And why 2 years later? Detective Porter knew one thing: this wasn't an accident. Someone had been watching this case, waiting. What do you think the initials mean, a clue, or a signature? Tell me your theory below, and make sure you're subscribed, because what happens next changes everything. When investigators pried open the barrel, everyone expected the worst. But what they found didn't make sense. Inside, there were no bodies this time. No remains. Instead, the barrel was packed with charred camping gear, melted metal frames, half-burned sleeping bags, and what looked like a destroyed video camera. And wedged beneath the debris, a plastic-wrapped bundle that had somehow survived the heat. Inside the bundle was a crumpled topographic map, one that clearly marked Cold Creek Mine, an abandoned silver mine about 6 miles north of the Rockwood Trail. Someone had circled the words "Lower Shaft" in red ink, and scrawled beneath it, almost unreadably, "We didn't mean to." For 2 years, detectives believed the boys vanished near Crystal Ridge. But now, the evidence pointed somewhere else entirely, deep into restricted land, where Cold Creek Mine sat sealed off since the 1980s after a tunnel collapse killed 4 workers. And nobody, not even the park rangers, was supposed to go there. Porter led a new search team into the Cold Creek site that same week. They worked in pairs, sweeping through every tunnel. At first, nothing. Just collapsed beams, rusted rails, and echoes that made your heart race. But then, one of the searchers noticed a gap in the rock wall, hidden behind a fallen support beam. A faint draft of cold air leaked through. They forced the opening wider. The smell hit first, damp earth, decay, and something chemical. And inside that hidden chamber, they found 2 skeletons, side by side, half buried beneath rock dust. Nearby lay a broken flashlight, a rusted thermos, and a single camping tag that read, "Property of Ethan Walker." DNA confirmed it within days. The remains belonged to Ethan Walker and Ryan Blake, the 2 boys who'd vanished with Liam. But the discovery only deepened the mystery. Because according to forensics, both boys had died just days after they disappeared. Meaning, someone had kept that second barrel, with their gear and the map, hidden for 2 whole years before placing it where it would be found. And Liam, the boy whose remains were in the first barrel? Now it seemed, he wasn't the victim at all. He might have been the one who buried them. But if Liam did this, who sealed him inside that barrel later? What's your theory now? Was Liam running from something, or part of it? Drop your thoughts in the comments, I'll be reading them all. And if you're new here, hit subscribe, because what happens next will make your jaw drop. Detective Amanda Porter still drives past Crystal Ridge every few months. Not because she's assigned to the case anymore, but because she can't let it go. She keeps that map from the barrel locked in her desk drawer. Some nights, when sleep won't come, she traces the red circle over Cold Creek Mine, wondering if she missed something, or someone. 2 of them were found. 1 never was. And what really happened inside those mountains, still depends on who you ask. Locals say if you hike past Eagle Point after midnight, you can hear the sound of metal scraping in the woods, like someone digging, or dragging something heavy. Some swear it's just the old mine shifting underground. Others aren't so sure. Porter once said in an interview, and it's the line that still chills people to this day: someone buried the truth, not just the boys. For 2 years, the mountains held their silence. Then one autumn afternoon, a construction crew broke ground just a few miles from where the boys were last seen. 2 years later, a barrel was found in the woods. What do you think really happened that night? Was Liam running from something, or was there someone else out there all along? Drop your theory in the comments. I'll be reading every one. And if this story kept you hooked till the end, make sure you subscribe for more chilling true crime mysteries every week. Because the next one might just keep you up tonight.